Well, apparently my camera is a bit cloudy. Trying to clear out the camera. It's a bit cloudy. Is what it is. I don't know if you guys can see this picture, but this is my grandfather. It's my grandfather, my father's father. This is a picture of my young uncle. My uncle's much older than I am now, today. I want to share with you guys a piece of scripture before I get into actual conversation with you guys. I'm not too sure why the lighting is like this, but let's see, I'm going to try and put an effect on here. Ooh, everything just kind of froze up with that. Hold on a second, people. Like I just froze up. Okay, hold on a second. All right, sorry about that. Uh, my phone is old, so things will freeze up on it and stuff like that. Got a lot to talk about. You see, the title is "Restore the Snyderverse." You'll see a picture of Superman about to stab Doomsday, and if you look carefully, Superman attacking Steppenwolf. You know, Superman was going after every major threat in the world. You know, whether it was Steppenwolf, Doomsday, General Zod, the major threats, the alien threats that were in the world, Superman was involved in combating all of them in the little trilogy that we had with Zack Snyder's uh, Man of Steel, and then Batman v Superman, and then Justice League. But anyway, I want to talk to you guys. First, I want to come from some scripture. Okay, so for those of you who want to know where this comes from, it comes from Ephesians chapter 5, and it goes like this. Follow God, dear children. Walk in love, as Christ also loved us. He gave himself for us as an offering and as a sacrifice to God as a sweet smelling savor. I'm going to stop right there. There's more to it, but I want you to read on that on your own time. It's interesting what's there, but I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to keep it positive for now. But you should read on. I advise you to read all the way down to about verse verse 21. Okay? So if you read all the way down to verse 21. But for now, all that's really important is understanding the sacrifice to walk in love. The sacrifice to walk in love. All right. So, we got some news today. In fact, over the space of this week and part of last week, we've got news concerning what's happening in D.C. We got new administration and people in the administration. We don't exactly have a permanent DC Films head, but we have somebody acting in the DC Films head status right now. And what happened today, particularly today, is a particular film was canceled, the Batgirl film. Okay. Now, some people are like, "Oh man, that's terrible that that film is canceled." Me personally, I'm happy that it was canceled because it was going to be probably another flop film. DC films of late, particularly in the DCEU, have all been flops. The flopping started with the Harley Quinn film, and it continued to flop. It was Harley Quinn and Wonder Woman 84. We just recently had the Suicide Squad, and all three films were flops. Now we have Super Pets coming up, that is flopping. So the series of films under Walter Hamada after Shazam have all flopped. So the Flash movie was supposed to come out this year, and that was put off, and it looks like it's being reworked. The Black Adam movie, the trailers for Black Adam, have not hyped up the fan base. In fact, not a lot of fans have viewed it. That doesn't look too good either. Flash movie wasn't looking too good either. And so what I'm saying is that, all in all, I believe David Zaslav realized that the particular tone and the particular type of movies being made under Walter Hamada were just not doing well at all. At all. Like they weren't even making a profit at the box office. And meanwhile, we have Marvel and we have other legendary films and several other films in the industry doing just tremendously well. And some having mixed bag, but even Sony's doing well with their films. Spider-Man and Far Away from Home. And this is during COVID. This is outside of COVID. They're doing well. So what does that mean? It means the fan base is not fired up. The DC fan base is not fired up enough to, first of all, go into the cinemas to see the movies, and they're not fired up enough either to spread good word of mouth so that other people that are not even DC fans will go into the cinema. Okay? That is what that is. And David Zaslav is realizing the bottom line, and this guy likes results. So he's looking probably at the Batgirl movie and saying, this don't make no sense. Even though the movie's almost done, they're doing post-production work. Um, it's just not the tone of movie that seems to get people into the cinemas. If you look at the movies that have gotten people into the cinemas and have made blockbuster money, we're talking about films like The Batman, Matt Reeves' The Batman. It was a serious film. It wasn't funny. We didn't have a whole set of cat jokes and stuff like that. You look at Joker. Joker did it. Todd Phillips' Joker did very well in the cinema. I get a very serious movie. The only movie that kind of had jokes and stuff, and I didn't go and see it personally. I still haven't seen the whole movie. Was Aquaman. Okay, but the reason why Aquaman did so well was because the people who supported Zack Snyder and the fact that Jason Momoa supported Zack Snyder, all kind of, and then the fact that this film actually started under Zack Snyder, and then Zack Snyder was moved out. James Wan was kind of Zack Snyder was kind of like overseeing DC along with Jeff Johns. He was overseeing DC, and these young directors were coming under him. So James Wan came under Zack Snyder. So a lot of people were hopeful that Aquaman would, come out, with that kind of quality. So people were supporting, and then Jason Momoa was very supportive of Zack Snyder, and wanting to see the Snyder Cut come out and all that. So that is why people came out and saw Aquaman. But Aquaman, to be honest with you, there were some great like action scenes, like the rooftop scene and a couple other action scenes that were really tremendous. But to say that the movie itself was something, no, it wasn't. It was the storyline was very, very, very thin, paper thin. It wasn't. It was. I didn't. I was personally not very impressed with it. The Aquaman that we saw in Zack Snyder's Justice League is miles away from the Aquaman that James Wan brought to the table. That Aquaman was a little bit more wacky, a little bit more crazy, and for certain jokes, it wasn't. So it was still an adventure movie. It was kind of like an Indiana Jones underneath the water, like James Wan said, a swashbuckling adventure. So maybe that's what he wanted, but I feel it was still influenced by the establishment, Jeff Johns, and those kinds of people. So it is what it is. People supported the movie. It made a lot of money. It made the most amount of money any DC film has made to date. DCEU film. And in terms of DC films, it did pretty good. Uh, so, anyway, the point is, Walter Hamada has not had a successful movie in cinemas since he's taken over. And by the way, Aquaman was not a Walter Hamada initiated film. That's a film coming from Zack Snyder's regime when Zack Snyder was there. Okay, Aquaman got greenlit under Zack Snyder. Now I thought that Aquaman kind of got changed up. James Wan's Aquaman kind of got changed up. It was I believe it was a much more serious movie, and I think they were going to go more in detail into the sci-fi elements of it. Because if we look at Zack Snyder's Justice League, we see Mira using those clicks and those high pitched sounds underwater, and it tells me that Zack Snyder was forming a certain type of communication that Atlanteans use. But that's okay. It's all well and good. Some of the storyline was changed. Continuity was kind of broken in James Wan's Aquaman, but it's okay. It's all well and good. The other thing that I want to talk about is the fact that not only did these movies flop and underperform, but also, like I said before, fan interest is only declining and declining rapidly in DC. The management of DC was just so horrible after Zack Snyder left. There was no direction, there was no vision, no plan. They had these standalone movies, but they kind of linked by, to the Snyderverse, but yet they're trying to cancel the Snyderverse. I believe that, you know, took a big toll on DC because the leadership didn't know what they were doing. There was a lot of nepotism. They're try and kind of link up with Marvel or trying to Marvelize the universe, which I spoke about in great detail how they were trying to Marvelize it, and they did not know themselves no favor by beginning their debut, their beginning of their vision for the universe with a flop. Justice League was a tremendous flop, and that was because they tampered so much with the movie, with Joss Whedon, etc. So there was no love. These people didn't care about the fans. They showed no love towards the fans. They never listened to us as fans. And so this is where Ephesians chapter 5 comes into play. You want to be a follower of God, then you have to show love. You have to walk in love. You have to show love, whether love is coming to you or not. And in this case, these executives never walked in that. They were power hungry. They wanted to tell the fans what they were going to do. They had their own personal agenda. Of course, their agenda was to try and link DC with Marvel. Okay, this is what Jeff Johns was trying to work towards. The same way how he had the CW kind of Marvelized and had Marvel writers in the CW and so on. They were trying to work at getting this CW-like link to cross over with Marvel. Now, for you guys to understand, this was their agenda. Did the fans approve of it? Absolutely not. And why would the fans approve of something when the fans were coming to see your movies because your movies were not Marvel movies? If the fans loved Marvel so much, they would be watching Marvel movies. And even if they were Marvel fans, why would they go and watch a Marvel movie in a DC film? They don't need to do that. They got Marvel. So they're going to watch Marvel. Branding is something where you want to distinguish your brand from another brand. You don't want to duplicate another brand as a new brand. That's redundancy. This establishment, pushed by Jeff Johns and his advice and counsel after they kidnapped the brand from Zack Snyder with the initial ideas and development that was in store, what they did was they devalued the brand. Now, David Zaslav, being an outsider coming in, which is what exactly, what's the guy's name? I can't remember the guy's name now, who was in charge, but he just wasn't strong enough. The guy that came in and overseed Warner Media. That guy that came in to oversee Warner Media, I can't remember his name right now, Jason Keeler, right? He just wasn't strong enough, and they got rid of him. The old regime was able to get rid of Jason Keeler. But Zaslav is not Jason Keeler. He's a man that wants results. And first of all, when he came in, he said, we're focused on the IPs, the major IPs, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. He was clear about what was important. He is also a big fan of Batman v Superman. Okay? So he was very clear on what needed to happen. And then he would be paying attention to the fans' feedback. And not just any fans. Some fans, they come out there and they run their campaigns or whatever. And These fans have uh, fickle gripes and grouses. We're not talking about those kinds of fans. We're talking about fans who realize that an injustice has happened and lies were told. What happened with Zack Snyder's Justice League is, and why that film needed to see the light of day, as well as David Ayer's Suicide Squad cut, is both Zack Snyder and David Ayer, their vision for the movie was sabotaged, and the studio interfered with their vision of the movie, though the movies came out. That is what we fans were fighting for, creative freedom. In the case of the canceled Batgirl movie that has been canceled, it's because David Zaslav's been watching the track record of Walter Hamada and his films coming out and realizes this film ain't going to make no money. We're going to just lose more money on this film, so he cut it. He was honest. He was straightforward. We cut this movie. This movie is not showing the light of day. It's not going to be seen. And that was that. Now, there's no deception there. We're clear this movie's not seeing the light of day. It is what it is. Maybe you'll see it on DVD or Blu-ray or something like that. But it's not going into the cinemas. That's different to when Zack Snyder's movie, the Snyder Cut, has been killing it on Blu-ray, DVD, killing it on HBO Max. In fact, these people used Zack Snyder's Justice League to get people to come to HBO Max. Okay? And then in a form of deception, lied about the progress of Zack Snyder's Justice League, withholding figures, withholding stuff, tried to sabotage the movie with the Tom and Jerry incident, and kept on posting up and trolling the fans on YouTube and any other place. Then calling Zack Snyder's Justice League a cul-de-sac, meaning there's going to be no sequel to this movie, even though the fans asked for a sequel. That is what we're talking about. And that's not the same thing as a Batgirl movie that's been canceled. Do I feel for the directors and the people who put in their effort and work into the movie? Absolutely. Absolutely, like any creative piece. And maybe it'll see the light of day. Maybe people at least will be able to see it. Okay? I have no problems with it. If it ends up on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, the track record of these movies tells me, I mean, this is common sense, tells me this movie would be a flop. The same people protesting this movie, the Batgirl movie, guess what? They're the same people who should have gone and watched Wonder Woman 84. They didn't. They should have gone out and watched the Harley Quinn film. They didn't. Those are two women films that flopped. And we all know women in Hollywood, certain movies, they don't do well. That's why people thought Wonder Woman was a risk. But it turned out to be an excellent movie. But just because Wonder Woman was an excellent movie and Captain Marvel did well, doesn't mean every single superhero movie with a woman lead is going to do well. And that's what y'all forgetting. We still living in a back for front kind of world. And then the kind of products that are coming out from Warner Brothers as of late have been flops. They haven't gotten a single successful DCEU movie since Shazam. And Shazam, yeah, it broke even. A low budget broke even, but it wasn't a great success. They're getting a sequel, and that was greenlit yesterday. But Zack Snyder's Justice League can't get sequels. So David Zaslav realized we got too many projects. Y'all ain't got no money for these big tentpole movies because y'all taking the money and losing the money on smaller projects. Let's see how many back-to-back flops we had. Harley Quinn, Wonder Woman 84, The Suicide Squad, and now we have Super Pets. That's 4 back-to-back flops. You ain't made no money off of those films. None. So why? Why? Explain to me, why is it that money couldn't have been used to make a big budget film where at least money comes back? So David Zaslav was right. He canceled the Batgirl movie. He canceled the Supergirl movie because he said, hey, we not gonna leak more money, and we not getting that money back. We're not getting it back in the box office. We're not getting it back on DVD and Blu-rays. So why the hell would we put out more money on something that's not going to bring it back? And they said something, and it showed love. They listened to the fans. So we got Batfleck inside of Aquaman, and we see Ben Affleck, and we see Jason Momoa together. Jason Momoa put it up on his Instagram. Okay, he gonna be in that. He gonna be in the Aquaman movie. That got the fans. That broke the internet. Everything in Comic Con, it wasn't moving the needle. All of a sudden, Ben Affleck, Jason Momoa, just show a picture. That broke them the internet. That broke the internet. People are excited to see Aquaman because David Zaslav understands one thing. The major IPs is what drives a franchise, what drives the DCEU. Okay? It's Superman, and not just any Superman, it's Henry Cavill Superman. People know Henry Cavill now. We've seen him in 3 movies straight. He moves the needle. Ben Affleck, also known aka Batfleck, moves the needle. If you do a Batman movie with Batfleck tomorrow, and you could take Leslie Grace, who was supposed to be in the Batgirl movie, and you put her in that movie, it moves the needle. It will move the needle. Okay? Telling you. And you throw Deathstroke in that movie? Oh, shit. And it doesn't matter that we have an idea of what the movie is, not completely. It doesn't matter. It's going to move the needle anyway. Zack Snyder's Justice League was kind of a spoiled movie in many respects, in terms of there was a Justice League movie where Zack Snyder had some parts to play in it. It moved the needle anyway. You have to understand what you have. Warner Brothers Discovery understands what they have. They have, some people call us a rabid fan base, some people call us bots, some people call us cult. It's stupid, but it is what it is. But you have a fan base sitting down waiting. They're just waiting for you to drop a movie in the cinema or drop. They will go. Let me tell you how crazy this fan base is and how committed they are. It's clearly they are. This fan base, it does not matter what Zack Snyder is doing, what project he's doing. He's doing Rebel Moon right now. He's got Army of the Dead Las Vegas. It's coming out, the animated thing. And then he got another sequel to the Army of the Dead. Listen, y'all need to understand, because a lot of y'all don't understand. This man has an inbuilt fan base now. And it keeps growing. It keeps growing. Okay? He got people, execs in the industry. He has journalists now in the industry who are fans of him. He's got directors in the industry who are fans of him. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. Okay? So, to kind of put it in perspective, Zack Snyder's name is not getting smaller, it's only getting bigger. And the fact that he's doing more projects now with Netflix, not just WB anymore, Netflix, it's just going to blow up even more. So, he's going to cost more. But, yeah, Henry Cavill costs more. Ben Affleck might cost more. Gal Gadot might cost more. But I'm going to tell you this. It's worth it to invest in these actors and to bring them back, because the movies, sometimes you have to invest big to get big. And that's where Warner Bros. Was going wrong. They were saying, well, we need to conserve money, so we're going to invest small to get back small. But you're not getting back anything. We need to invest small because you're cutting corners. People know Warner Bros. Is known for a certain standard in their movies. When you drop that standard, ain't nobody going to go see your movies. You're not Marvel. You can't get away with those things. But Marvel will always, I'm not mad at Marvel. I'm not a Marvel fan, but I'm not mad at Marvel because Marvel catered to their fan base. They knew what their fan base wanted. They had their long-term goal, and they had their fan base gobble up a whole bunch of shit to get to that long-term goal. But DC and Warner Brothers, the executives, didn't understand Zack Snyder's vision. I heard a lot of people, and because they sabotaged him on the inside, they made Zack Snyder sound like he was just an action. He was just an action director. That's all he did. He had no vision. He had no foresight. Warner Brothers was just going blind. If they had only stuck with Zack Snyder since 2013 to 2017, if they had stuck with that guy, the film we saw recently, that was shot way back in 2016. We'd have had that in 2016, and we'd be on to the Cyborg movie. In fact, we would have been done with the Cyborg movie, because the Cyborg movie was supposed to come out in 2020. We'd have had a whole bunch of other movies. We'd have had the Atom movie. This was shot in 2016, ladies and gentlemen. We were supposed to have an Atom movie since 2017, 2018. We'd have had a Green Lantern movie a long time ago. But the lack of vision and the vindictiveness and the jealousy is what caused these guys to get kicked out of their jobs. And now, nobody really wants them to work with them. So, ultimately in the end, if DC's DC, be DC. If DC has to cross over with Marvel, you can first do it. I'm going to show you all how easy this is. You could do the crossover in an animated version. Go through your animation. They've always been leading the way. You want to cross DC over with Marvel, do it first in an animated movie. So simple. And then, when you're done with that, we got to look to see how the DC universe is shaping up, because dimensions were starting to be added to DC. Now, DC bears a lot of different things now, but ultimately it wasn't done properly. And these different characters were supposed to fit into that universe, but the universe supposed to have stayed grounded. But thanks to sabotage, thanks to the industry being anti-Snyder, because they were intimidated by the fact that he was bringing something that was so much hype behind it. Batman v Superman was, the hype was unbelievable for Batman v Superman. I mean, the hype was on a level that was just epic. And the reason why Batman v Superman didn't do so well is because people in the industry started writing negative articles about it. And they tried to tear it down, because that same year, Civil War was coming out. And we all know the superior film between the two movies is Batman v Superman. Theatrical cut or Ultimate Edition. It doesn't matter which one. It's superior. And there's several reasons. The first one is multi-genre movie. A movie that can take thrillers, film noir, a little bit of horror, sprinkle of comedy, and have all of that in one movie with drama. You'll never find a comic book movie like that. Never. Not to mention the art inside of that movie. And the action. That's the kind of movie that Batman v Superman is and was. And to this day, Batman v Superman is one of the best comic book movies you'll ever see. If you're a thinking person, if you're a person who enjoys art, enjoys movies. Because it's not a genre movie. It's not a comic book movie. Zack Snyder approached it as a science fiction drama with action in it. That's what it was. So it had a lot of very similar, very recognizable attributes to our world, this world we live in right now. But it was so real some people were offended by it because he was looking for a kicker. But ultimately, in the end, yes, Superman died and all of that too in the movie. Ultimately, in the end, it was one of the man. It's still. I watched it just recently there, and I saw something extra in it. It's one of the baddest freaking comic book movies I've ever seen. You know, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. It's a very very good movie. I wouldn't say that's his pinnacle. I would say I need to see what goes on with Justice League, but Justice League One was bad as well. Dope, but it had more upside to it. It was much more of a upside film. But in life, life doesn't work like that. I mean, with Justice League, um, everything kind of clicked together and worked together ultimately in the end, and so we had a happy ending. But real life is more like Batman v Superman. And why I appreciate that film so much is because the ending of the film ends on a hopeful note, in spite of everything, with the dust rising off the coffin. And but it's a sad story. And but the thing about it is, what people don't understand is, good people die. Good people, bad things happen to good people all the time, and it don't always. The story don't always end. The story don't always end good. In fact, in reality, in real life, the story more than often ends horribly for good people. And so what I'm saying is, walking in love doesn't mean good things happen to you. Walking in love doesn't mean good things happen to you. It doesn't guarantee that. Okay? And Superman walked in love. It's because he loved his adopted world, because he loved Lois Lane. All right, I'm going to show you again. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 1 and 2. What does it say? Walk in love as Christ himself offered himself as a sacrifice to God. Jesus Christ's story didn't end well in the carnal sense, in the human sense. We know he rose again. But how did it end? He was crucified. And he was a good person. And in this life, he was crucified. And for most people, that's where the story ends. Of course, we know he rose again and all of that. But for a lot of people, some people don't believe he rose from the dead. The Sadducees never believed in a resurrection. So what I'm trying to say is, in this life, you can do a lot of good, and people can assassinate you for it with their mouths, with their tongues. They can say all kinds of evil things about you. And you can end up, the consequences of that is you could be buried under that. Your career, your businesses, your livelihood could be jeopardized and removed from you because of that. So there's no guarantee that because you do good, or you wish good, or you love people, that means you're going to get back the same love. Now, Zaslav, let's talk about him. So we've been fighting for Restore the Snyderverse, which is what this theme is. You see the hashtag. We've been fighting nonstop for the Snyderverse. We've been fighting for it. It's going on 6 years now, right? And we was getting no more love back at us, none. But David Zaslav and WBD, Warner Brothers Discovery, very much looks like you're going to show us some love. We're going to see. Everything will have to pan out, we see. But it seems as though the direction that David Zaslav has, at least, is that to restore these big IPs. Now, coming with that, good intentions, this sacrifice. Of course, people want to assassinate you. They want to tear down this new establishment because they're making moves and they're canceling stuff. So, of course, there's going to be those people who are going to try and assassinate that. But the problem with that is we got precedent. See, we know what those people and what they stood for, what happened with WB as a result of that. Those same people criticizing what the movements that this new regime is doing were the same people who were not supporting the movies that they advocated for, were the same people who requested certain movies come out, certain types of movies come out. And when they did, they flopped. So these people, whoever they are, have no substance behind them. And that's why we don't pay attention to them. But the people who have been the people who have been consistent here have been the fans who've been pushing for the release of the Snyder Cut, the fans who've been consistent and pushing for the restoring of the Snyderverse. They've followed through. They continued onwards when they were being berated, mocked, labeled the most vilest thing ever, toxic. They call us toxic. We persisted. And as a result of that, we got the Snyder Cut. And now things are moving in the direction as I've been almost all the way along, but even more so now, towards seeing Justice League 2 and 3 come to fruition. And possibly 4. I'm hearing Zack Snyder saying, but probably 6. Also, we want to see the Air Cut. And of course, Zack Snyder's Justice League needs to be in cinemas. But the point behind it is, BVS showed us what real life is like. What kind of price is paid. The cost. And I can't talk for Marvel films. I don't know about Marvel films. People talk about them, rant and rave about Marvel films. I don't particularly like Marvel films because they always have this hee hee ha ha in them, and I just don't like it. Just for me, it's cringe. Even though I did like Black Panther. But my point anyway is this. At the end of the day, we can't be talking about one film being a disaster or Zack Snyder's wasn't a proper head for DC, and yet flop after flop after flop, the regime that was before us keeps on stumbling and doing a lot of crap. But Zack Snyder, he's not been in DC. He's been removed from DC since 2017. He's not been in DC. He has had to make no creative decisions whatsoever. So how do you explain from 2017 to 2022 the complete trashing and decline? Let me say something else. If you look at what was happening with the films, we had Man of Steel made $620-something million. 670-something, I can't remember how much. Then we had Batman v Superman, 873 million, whatever. Then we had Suicide Squad, 700-something million, right? Wonder Woman, 800-something million, okay? Then we had the Justice League flop. And then we had Aquaman, made over $1 billion. If you look at The films that were inside of Zack Snyder's proper original Snyderverse, even though they were tampered with, they consistently made over 600 and something $1 million. And one broke $1 billion. When we look at the Hamadaverse, we see consistently that the movies, they're not making anywhere near that amount. The anomaly in the Hamadaverse, which is not even a Hamadaverse movie and was independent, was Todd Phillips' Joker. And Todd Phillips' Joker pulled in over $1 billion. But this is something that Tommy Emmerich did not want happening. They tried everything to make sure this film did not succeed. They didn't want that kind of film at all for DC Films, because that film was actually greenlit before the change in regime. And here's the interesting thing. That film breaks $1 billion. So ultimately, in the end, Walter Hamada and this Toby Emmerich regime did nothing to help Warner Brothers. They destroyed the company. They lost investments for investors. They did nothing for the company. So, what David Zaslav and companies need to do is try to restore the IP's image. And the way how they're going about doing it is trying to get these major IP players back into movies. So we're talking about Henry Cavill's Superman. We're talking about Ben Affleck's Batman. We're talking about Wonder Woman's Wonder Woman. Just as how Leroy Kong and several other DC fans in common sense said, you need to have these guys in these movies. You need to. Now, I hope that this new regime will realize that the Snyder Cut needs to be released in theaters. The sooner you do that, the better. It's there. It may have to be formatted for cinema, even though I doubt it. Or maybe it will have to be. But ultimately, in the end, that thing needs to be shown in IMAX. And it needs to be put out in cinemas, period. And the Snyder Cut fans will support it. The other thing is the Ayer Cut. The Ayer Cut needs to be greenlit, and it needs to be one of the first movies that comes out from this regime that's already been made. It needs to be out and done. From thenceforth, they need to greenlit the Justice League 2 and 3. And let me tell you why Zack Snyder's Justice League needs to go into cinemas. The first reason is, let's see how it performs in the cinema. Yes, it's an old movie. Yes, it's been seen many, many a time, but it's liked. Put it out in the cinema, and let's see how people respond to it. That gives you an idea of how people will respond to a sequel, which is fresh and new. If the response is overwhelming in the cinemas, and that thing actually rakes in money as a box office hit, then it's a no-brainer. The sequel must happen. If it doesn't, at least you have a feel for what would happen if a movie like that goes into cinemas. It's common sense. The Ayer Cut, again, release that thing in cinemas when it's done and see how it does. Again, it's a different cut of a movie that came out already. So you have to bear that in mind. So if the numbers are spectacular, great. If the numbers are not spectacular, you bear in mind this was a movie that came out already. So, that is what I have to say. For now, I spent 45 minutes and 6 seconds talking to you guys about this stuff. I have some food. I'm going to go eat, but I have to drink some water first. And I'll be on my way. So, remind you guys again, it's Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. But I suggest very strongly you read all the way down to verse 21. I'll catch you guys later. I am Christ Am Disciple. Have a good night, people.